Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman & Wakefield, Dimes Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Genova, Burns and Giantomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Siami Development, SJP Properties, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, The Wickoff Group, Urban American.
So here we are. It's the spring of 2011, and many people, with the exception of me and perhaps my friend, one of my guests here, don't believe that the world is that great. Everybody is so strong. There's this euphoria that real estate's a great time, stock market's at high time, all these records. So what's really happening today in the real estate market? I brought together 4 individuals to provide their insight on the state of the market. My guest from Norfolk, Virginia, the chairman and CEO of Harbor Group International, Jordan Sloan. From New York City, the chairman and CEO of Essex Capital Partners, Mitchell Rudder. Another guy from Lower Manhattan, the managing director of capital markets, Ronnie Levine at Meridian Capital Group. And last but not least, my good friend who has not been on the show for 2 years because he didn't want to be here, my real good friend, Josh Must, the chairman and CEO of Must Development. So Josh, you've been in the market longer than some of us here. You've seen it in many cycles. How do you look at the real estate market today?
Obviously, it's trying to reawaken itself. I think that it's not as good as people would like to think, but it sure is better than 2 years ago and a year ago. I think
is it easier to deal with banks? Is it, how do you look at it? Because 2 years ago, one would say, we were in service, as one might say.
Well, let's say that everything today is arm's length. There's no such thing as being in anybody's arms. You're an arm's length. You have to prove everything that you're doing. The money is not easily coming. The requirements are sometimes between onerous and impossible. Every once in a while, you are able to finance something because your loan to value is so favorable. But to suggest that the banks now are creating a wealth of opportunity, not in my market anyway.
Wait a second. Mr. Levine, you're out in the market. I know you're much younger than all of us sitting over here, but you told me that there's a lot of money. I mean, there's financing hitting record numbers. I mean, Wells Fargo, Capital One, M&T, forget the Germans, they're out of business. But, there are certain Europeans, the Canadians, and CMBS. CMBS is back.
Well, I think there's a disconnect in the market between development deals and cash flowing properties. And I think, the difficulty that Mr. Muss is referring to is really in ground up construction, rehab projects. I think if you've got cash flowing assets, stable cash flowing CBD office, retail, there is a significant appetite and a significant amount of liquidity in the market for those deals. The life insurance companies are competing very hard, and as you mentioned, this CMBS market is extremely active.
I mean, life insurance companies, MetLife put out $8.2 billion last year, and they want to put out more. Prudential put out $8.8 billion. Principal put out $3 billion, and they've all increased their numbers.
Right.
Now, you see this on a national scale. How do you see the market as opposed to, you have properties in New York, but how do you see the market in general around the country and in your markets?
Well, I think Ronnie's right. We're not in the development business at all. All we do is buy existing assets that are already built and already have tenants, and we're finding the market's very healthy. We were not able to sell anything in 2008 and 2009 and 2010 for the most part till the end of the year. And now we are looking to sell several of our assets. We're refinancing some of our assets. We're very active acquiring new assets. So from our standpoint, we feel that, as Ronnie said, there's a lot of liquidity in the market and for debt and equity.
Mitch, over the last couple of years, you've seen different markets, and you're in New York, and you're also in Maryland. So how do you see the market today?
I would say the market right now is clearly recovering. Banks are no longer projecting rents going down. 2 years ago, we talk about where's the loan market now. Banks would be even more refined in projecting declining rents. Now I think perhaps too optimistically, they're projecting values going up. I would say that New York is pretty frenzied right now. There's a lot of equity, mostly institutional, chasing A-quality midtown product. And I would say that there's not enough product to meet the demand, and that is, in my mind, perhaps driving prices a little too high, more than would be appropriate. I think that there are better yields and more product available in the Washington market, and we're focused there right now as well.
Jordan, you're in that market. Are you seeing much better yields in the Virginia and Washington market than in the New York market?
Well, we're a relative newcomer to New York, and we're not active in the multifamily area as of yet in New York. But I would agree with Mitch. Relative to New York, I think in D.C., particularly multifamily, the fundamentals are very strong, and I think you can see better yields.
It's interesting. You are the new kid on the block in New York, and even Musk would probably say you made a good deal when you bought 4 New York Plaza. And, I utilize that in a number of my seminars and my speeches of saying at the beginning of 2010, you buy 4 New York Plaza for $97 a square foot. And then at the end of the year, you buy a building on Broadway for maybe $440 a foot. The world changed. The world changed so much. I mean, why did you buy the new building?
Well, we want to make an entrance in New York, and we're very happy with both buildings.
I mean, they're both great deals.
They're two very different type of buildings. The building that we bought downtown for New York Plaza, first of all, we have J.P. Morgan has 75% of the building on a long-term lease. We're very happy with that, but there's not the opportunity to enjoy a strong recovery in the market because of the long-term lease. And the building that we bought at 1412 Broadway is kind of the opposite. That is in a very dynamic market. There are leases there that can be improved, hopefully, over a period of time as the market recovers.
Now, the interesting thing is Josh happens to have lots of office in Queens. And we were talking before about this rude perception. I mean, Queens is a great borough, great transportation into the city, convenient. And why you don't see that many companies from New York, from Manhattan, really looking to relocate to Queens?
Well, historically and more recently, there hasn't been any opportunities. In fact, for a while, they thought that maybe there would be a major market in Long Island City because of its proximity. I think this not quite happening as they wanted it to. We actually have a major office building in Forest Hills, which is now becoming available, and we're marketing it, and it's a unique property. People didn't understand that you can get a 250,000 square foot Class A building at a terrific location in the middle of the boroughs.
Just for my edification, what is the rent for a space? I'm not asking specifically. Are we in the mid-30s?
We're in the mid-30s with the understanding that if a company is going to relocate from elsewhere, there's an in-place abatement of about $12 a square
the
foot.
relocation, the REIT benefit,
The REIT benefit,
which
right.
really produces, an unbelievable return.
And there are other available amenities that brings the actual rent below $20 a square foot. But you have to find the right company. You have to find a company that wants to have inexpensive rent in an Class A building at a terrific location for transportation, right near where all the employees are and where the airports are and everything else. But those buildings are not available, so people haven't their mindset.
So there's a question of marketing.
Yeah.
Mitch, we were talking before about vacant land and what has happened over the last 18 months. This euphoria and pricing of development land, which doesn't even have a tax abatement. What are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing, in our view, land prices escalate to numbers that aren't making sense, particularly in view of the fact that for most of these parcels, the 421A is not available. The transaction that's been announced down in the Village for St. Vincent's is in the mid-400s a foot for unapproved land. How does that work? We're seeing as well, we've built...
But you know what? That's the West Village. That's Manhattan. It's located. As they say,
it is unique.
It's location.
But you still have to finance it. You still have to work through the construction loan conditions, which right now are not easy. It's difficult. We're seeing land in Williamsburg, where we've done some ground-up construction, hit 150 a foot, which
is pretty close to the high in 2007, because land in Williamsburg maybe reached the maximum, but 150, 160 was a real high number.
That's right. Not on the water.
Right. Now, an interesting market. You've been in downtown Brooklyn, which, has seen ups and downs. Everybody thought they could build every residential project development. The unfortunate thing is you can't live on Juniors to serve everybody cheesecake over there. What are you seeing in downtown Brooklyn? I mean, you have the classiest hotel in Brooklyn. There is no question. It's called the Marriott at the Brooklyn Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge Marriott. You have that, the best catering facility over there because of the magnitude of the space. Morton's.
Correct.
But where is downtown Brooklyn like a tale of two cities in different sections also?
Well, in my eyes, Brooklyn actually didn't take advantage. I got done in a little bit by the
Jordan,
rezoning.
we're going to take you to Brooklyn. So
it got done in a little bit. The total of downtown Brooklyn was rezoned mostly for the purpose of extending the commercial development. And unfortunately, given the market stepping back and people had the opportunity to build housing, and they started putting in little big, tall buildings and little pieces of property.
Like 51-story, the Brooklyner.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, the views are great. They'll always be great. But the question is how do you afford to finance? Well, the Brooklyner was, I believe, done by Avalon Bay.
No,
well, that was
Equity Residential.
Equity Residential. Right,
so it was a REIT.
Clara.
It was a REIT.
But the REIT there, and Avalon Bay is a REIT, and then the other were public companies. So they're able to come up with their own 5% and 6% money, and they're sort of making it work. But you're talking about that any new development.
But what about the retail? I mean, the retail in downtown Brooklyn was always great. I mean, I know Marty Markowitz would love to have an Apple store, but you do have Trader Joe's, which is doing great.
The retail in downtown Brooklyn right now is doing very well. We actually are developing a retail portion right at smack in the middle of everything. Our claim to fame is it's right next to Shake Shack. It's still, downtown Brooklyn is a very big expanse, maybe a little bigger than that was set out to be.
Here's a question for you and for Mr. Sloan.
Okay.
Okay, you own 2 hotels according to my research. Where are your 2 hotels?
One is, we have 2 very small hotels, limited service hotels. One's in Newport News, Virginia, and one is in a place called Lumberton, North Carolina. Its claim to fame is it's exactly the halfway point between New York and Miami.
So when people drive down, they stay there
They
overnight?
stay at it's a very, very good performing Fairfield Inn in Lumberton.
So, Mr. Muss got into the hotel business
By accident.
by accident. Would you buy another hotel today?
The 2 hotels that we have now, we own on our own. We would be interested in participating with a hotel operator if we did future hotel investments. Outside of that, I don't think we'd be interested in doing making additional hotel investments.
So here's my question, Mitch. It's a reasonable time. You're looking at things. What are you looking to do? I mean, what's there? What's your appetite?
Well, first, we're looking to make a return on our money and not be seduced into the frenzy of the market. That's the first thing. That said, we have our eye in New York on a few particular sectors. First, and it's a sign of this perceived recovery, many funds are still left with dollars in the kitty. They don't want to send it back. And in order to get the yields that they require, they're starting to look at development. And when a fund will look at development, they're coming to experienced developers like us or you, and they're bringing deals to us, actually, and they're willing to put the equity in with us, but they'll put in a share such that it mitigates the recourse requirement.
On the construction.
On the construction loan. So we're looking at those opportunities for residential rental, and it's an interesting paradox right now. New York has job growth, yet there are no real cranes in the ground building new rental residential in Manhattan. Chicago, which hasn't experienced job growth, has 5 cranes already. So we see this.
But Chicago always builds more than they need. I mean, that's the problem why the rents in Chicago office never go up, and that's why the apartments, because you just constantly could build without any.
But it does mean that inevitably, once people go back to work and continue to go back to work in New York, and households begin to get created again where they weren't created in the last few years, and the children move out of the house when they moved home out of school, there'll be a huge demand for rental residential. So we are looking at that. As well, you know, we own a large building on 38th to 39th Street and 10th Avenue. That's leased for another 13, 14 years. But the area around that, which had started to percolate due to the Hudson Boulevard that had been announced. So the city's kind of slowed that down. Funds are tight. So there's been a rollback in value there. And we see some potential for value, and we're looking there.
I mean, unfortunately, as you know, I walk around the city. Sometime one day, I'm walking like this, looking up at the sky, and I walked past your building over there, and then I saw the TF Cornerstone building, which is like in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And the only claim to fame is that they have a Duane Reade, and they're opening up a restaurant over there, a fancy restaurant. But it's an experience. There's nothing there. I mean,
and right now, if you try to get from the east side to go to your apartment there at 4 in the afternoon, it could take an hour due to the Lincoln Tunnel traffic. Those buildings were built, and ultimately I guess the successor to Rockrose, TF Cornerstone, they'll continue to build on the premise that the boulevard will come, and it will someday. And
you know what? And it's fully leased.
Right.
Ronnie, Mitch talks about construction financing. What's the reality on construction financing? Who's getting it? Who's lending? What kind of pricing and so on?
All right. Well, I mean, I think the general rule of thumb with construction financing for the last, year, 2 years has been the people that can get it are the people that don't need it. So if you can afford to build for cash, you can probably get a construction loan. So.
You sound like you're spending too much time with Muss.
Well, it's been the truth. So, we've seen things loosen up a little bit on the construction financing. It's certainly not easy, but I think for rental projects. Certainly, we've seen a lot of interest in garden apartment complexes in New Jersey. Banks are very interested in financing those. In the city, for sale condominium projects are getting looked at. I mean, as you are well aware of, there's several ground-up hotel construction projects in Manhattan that have recently gotten financing. So,
To quote one of Mr. Muss's golf friends, who I ran into at a wedding the other day, he says, there's too much construction going on, but when those hotel properties have difficulties, I'll go and buy them at a cheap price. Because they're going to have difficulties because it's when are you opening up in the cycle? The situation was good because certain people who built 2 years ago who were worried in the market, now the occupancy is up, so they opened up the right time. They never expected the numbers, even though they projected, but it's getting closer over there.
Right. So I mean, there's a lot of scrutiny on sponsorship. The blue chip sponsors are getting financing, and they're lower leverage deals.
Here's a big question which relates to Jordan's comment before, and it's a pet peeve that I have with regard to our government service enterprises. It's very nice that Fannie and Freddie are providing financing for your deals, because that's what they should be providing, because it's affordable rental apartments. But Fannie and Freddie also finance certain people in New York City where the apartments were $500,000 a unit as opposed to $70,000. What happens if they change the rules and they say goodbye to Fannie and Freddie? What's going to happen with the multifamily world?
Well, I think multifamily will still have plenty of access to debt. And in the last 90 days, we've been contacted by every CMBS lender, and as I think most people know, CMBS is back. And CMBS, the favorite product of CMBS is multifamily. The favorite product of most banks today that are looking to keep loans on their balance sheet is multifamily. So I think Fannie and Freddie, don't get me wrong, I think Fannie and Freddie are very important, but I think they're not the only source of financing. That was the case a couple of years ago, but today there are many sources, insurance companies as well.
I would say also, to a certain extent, the Freddie Mac more specifically, it is a securitization model. I mean, that is what they're doing. I mean, there are some implied guarantees, but the reality is, the regular CMBS platforms are getting a pretty good percentage of their pools on multifamily. They're winning on leverage, and the pricing has, the gap between the agency pricing and CMBS pricing is definitely narrowed. So
I think it's also important to remember that the $500,000 apartment in New York is middle income. The same as the $70,000 apartment in Newport.
But I don't think our taxpayer money was middle income on Stuytown, and the government is completely in the hole on Stuytown. So maybe there's a question in middle.
That's a special circumstance, which with stabilization and everything. But if you build enough $500,000 homes, and which is probably for a family that's making about $150,000 plus or minus, which in New York City is middle income, then you're starting to loosen up the market below, so that there's enough. So the $250,000 apartment becomes available, and the $150,000 becomes available because people do want to move up.
Well, Michael, you're also, I assume you're referring to the $500,000 per sale apartment.
No, I'm talking per rent.
Well, rental apartments, I mean, I think the difference is on the rental apartments is that there's an income stream to underwrite. I mean, it's amazing. I saw a chart the other day that looked at delinquency rates, and actually the delinquency rates for Fannie and Freddie on rental apartments is amazingly low, amazingly low.
2-3%, what is it?
It's even less than that.
It's even less than that.
Here's a question with regard to, we've spoken about hotels, we've spoken about residential. How do you see retail around the country? I mean, Josh brought up retail. New York City retail is a different world because there's a lack of urban retail. Urban retail is really great in the 5 boroughs because of the need. How do you see it around the rest of the country?
Well, retail isn't our favorite category. Office and multifamily are our 2 favorite categories, but I think the situation is similar in the sense that urban retail seems to be doing fairly well, and suburban retail I think it's over retailed.
What do you think? I mean, you live in Long Island. Do you think the retail in Long Island? I mean, because I'm talking true urban retail, downtown Washington retail.
I think once 5 years ago I was around Roosevelt Field, which is about a half hour from my house, but I would never go near there. But it seems that the whole area there is so oversaturated by retail that it's almost the same category as office market, which is oversaturated elsewhere. I can't imagine that Long Island has a need for more retail. I think they eat each other up. In the boroughs, there's certainly a call for additional retail because it's so hard to get entry. Whether it's Brooklyn, Queens, maybe not Staten Island, but there is a tremendous need for additional retail.
Most people have been in Staten Island since the 1960s. So there's you opened up a Wallbound originally over there, and you even took the ferry at that time.
We waited 40 years for the rent to go up from $5 a square foot. Now we're making money. But no more Wallbounds. In fact, our Wallbounds morphed into a CVS. And the supermarket went into the old drugstore. So you have to put everything within proportion now. There used to be open up a shopping center with a supermarket, with a liquor store, with a dry cleaner. Things have changed.
So things have changed, and I think, even though I'm the pessimist, I think that the general concept and the observation of the four of you is that things are getting a little better in 2011. Perhaps better because we're in New York City, but Jordan is also saying it's getting better around the nation. So I'd like to thank Jordan Sloan, Mitch Rudder, Ronnie Levine, and Josh Muss. See you next week.
Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman & Wakefield, Dimes Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Giantomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Siami Development, SJP Properties, Site Comply, Sterling & Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, The Wickoff Group, Urban American.